Here in about 6 weeks, we mark the 80th anniversary of the day that lives in infamy. We're, of course, talking about the attack on Pearl Harbor.
The surprise attack by the Japanese Imperial Army killed more than 2,400 Americans. 10 minutes into the attack, an 1,800-pound bomb smashed through the deck of the battleship USS Arizona.
The ship exploded. It sank with more than 1,000 men trapped inside.
Well, earlier this year, a piece of the USS Arizona was given to the Fort Miles Historical Association. Today, it's part of an exhibit in the Fort Miles Museum. We recently visited the museum to see how this relic, along with another piece of war history, creates two bookends to a global war that has affected us all.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
One day after the crushing attack on Pearl Harbor, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed a joint session of the U.S. Congress, launching the nation into nearly 4 years of battle.
I've always been fascinated with the Pearl Harbor story.
Cliff Geisler is on the board of directors of the Fort Miles Historical Association. His interest in military history led him to the University of Maryland, where he studied under one of the most recognized Pearl Harbor historians, Gordon Prang.
If you remember the movie Tora, 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 he wrote that.
Geisler says getting a hold of a relic from the USS Arizona was made possible through legislation created in 1995 that allowed the Navy to give salvaged pieces of the ship to organizations like the Fort Miles Historical Association.
When the ship was declared unsalvageable during the war, the Navy went in, it sank in about 40 feet of water, keel down, decks awash. But the superstructure remained above the waterline. So the Navy went in, cut away that material, and basically took it up and deposited it at a remote site at the Pearl Harbor Naval Station, where much of it remains to this day.
In 2018, with permission from the rest of the board of directors, Geisler requested a piece of the ship from the Navy.
And by 2020, we had permission, and the fragment was delivered March of 2020.
The 11-foot-long, 700-pound relic is now the centerpiece to the exhibit called Oil Still Bleeds, a relic and remembrances of the battleship USS Arizona, Delaware's forgotten heroes of Pearl Harbor.
So it's a long title, which developed over time. These pictures are all from his photo albums that he made during this year when he was first stationed in Hawaii.
Heidi Nastrom Evans is the exhibition curator. She says the Oil Still Bleeds part of the title refers to the oil that continues to rise to the surface from the wreckage of the USS Arizona. Heidi says the relic was the beginning of the project, but a team of historians and people at Fort Miles worked together to make the story relevant to Delaware and Delaware's history.
We use the relic as a focal point, and then we talk about Delawareans who were at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. That's the first wave of the attack.
An interactive touchscreen gives visitors details on 23 people from throughout the state and what they did that day.
Out of the 23 people that we focus on in the exhibit, 2 people perished that day, both on the USS Shaw, but everybody else survived and went on to have interesting careers for the most part. And all of that is documented in our interactive.
The interactive kiosk also tells the story of what was going on at Fort Miles during the war and efforts by some Japanese people to move to Sussex County following their time in internment camps.
I think 3 individual men sought to relocate here in Sussex County and work as farm laborers, but unfortunately, when they arrived, they were not welcomed by a lot of people, and then they were forced to return to the relocation centers. So we document their stories and tell that story because it's very interesting and important part of the larger story of World War II.
Geisler says the USS Arizona relic is the perfect complement to another piece of World War II history that was brought to Fort Miles in 2011.
We have a gun barrel in the front of this museum from the USS Missouri. If anyone has been to Pearl Harbor, they know that the USS Missouri, the ship where World War II ended, is now permanently moored as a museum ship, only a few hundred yards from the wreck of the USS Arizona. What we wanted to recreate was that kind of historical symmetry on a smaller scale. So we have a piece of World War II history, a battleship sunk on the day the war started, and then out front we have the gun barrel under which World War II ended.
Historic bookends to a war that, thanks to efforts like these at Fort Miles, will never be forgotten.